Welcome to Tāwara o Te Wai, Water New Zealand's podcast series. In this episode, we're looking at how we can build a visible career pathway in the water sector. We know that the water sector has been suffering from a shortage of skilled people for a long time, and that the lack of skilled workers is a real risk to the long-term goals of providing safe drinking water and a clean environment in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We also know that there's been a lack of investment in both infrastructure and staff, and that over the next 30 years, we're going to need to attract another 6,000 to 9,000 people. That's a big challenge, especially in today's competitive environment. I'm Debra Harrington from Water New Zealand, and joining me to discuss what we've been doing to meet that challenge is Water New Zealand's Training and Development Manager, Mumtaz Parker, Nick Hewer-Hewitt, Network Performance Manager from Wellington Water, Ian Couling, a Senior Training Consultant from WSP, and Donna Topping, Compliance Manager and Business Support at Downer. Thank you all for taking part. Can I just start by asking, what is the reason that we're in this situation? What are the main roadblocks to getting people into the water sector? Nick, I'm sure you've had some thoughts on this. Why do we have this problem now?
I think it's largely because it's not a visible career pathway. It's not like an electrician or a carpenter who you see on the road, or your mechanic or anything like that. It's a behind the scenes type role, and it doesn't have the visibility that, say, an electrician has. My son's an apprentice. He's out there being a fabricator because it's a bit more visible and the likes, whereas if I suggested to him, why don't you have a trade in the water industry, he doesn't know what it is, what it involves, or anything like that. So I think it's about a lack of visibility around at school when you leave. I think people fall into the water industry through, they see a job being advertised, or they know someone, or it sort of goes off on a tangent from a career they already have, like a plumber might then come along and do the water industry. But I think it's largely around a lack of visibility and a lack of a profile.
Yeah, I guess water is definitely something we do take for granted in this country, don't we? So I suppose as well, there's a kind of a lack of clarity around career options. There's uncertainty about, what even makes someone qualified for their job in the water sector.
Yeah, that's right. And when you mention water treatment plant operator or a water treatment technician or that, people don't know what it means. And at Wellington Water, we used to do pre-COVID water treatment plant tours, and people would come along and go, I did not know this place existed. I did not know this. And that's when we start getting people showing a bit of interest, when we show that, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of practical stuff going on, and things like that. So, but outside of that, there's not really.
There's a huge array of jobs, isn't there?
Yes, yeah, no, definitely. You look at Wellington Water, we've got everything in the water sector, from business analysts, we've got water treatment plant technicians, obviously, wastewater treatment plant technicians, engineers, IT specialists, and things like that. So in the water sector, yeah, there are plenty of career paths.
So one of the things we want to talk about today is the Water New Zealand competency framework, which has been developed by the sector to basically provide better clarity around what people need to be able to do in the various roles in the water sector. Mumtaz, can you expand on that and tell us what the competency framework actually is?
Yeah, sure. So the competency framework was really, developed or the intention is to help the sector to identify the knowledge and the skills that is required by the workforce. And it started off with the drinking water treatment operator role. And once that was completed, it was the drinking water distribution operator, then the wastewater treatment operator, and the wastewater network operator. And basically, it's to help people get an understanding of what they need to do and what they need to know in order to successfully, complete or do their role. And with the competency framework, I know that it's quite a comprehensive. Each of those documents are quite comprehensive. They are about 100 pages each. And so to make it easy for people to find the information that they're looking for, an at-a-glance was created. And the at-a-glance basically shows, for example, if you are a junior operator, what are, some of the competencies that you need to be involved in or need to be assisting with. And also if you aspire to be, for example, a senior operator or a team leader supervisor. And added to that, we have tried to also link that to unit standards that people may have actually completed already. So for example, if someone's having a conversation with the manager with regards to their professional development, they can actually develop in conjunction with their manager a plan, for example, a 12-month plan of what are the competencies that will be required for them to be able to get to that next stage or that next step in their career.
So it's obviously it's a very, very useful tool, isn't it, for both employees and employers? Absolutely.
And I guess the message is that there isn't an expectation that everything in the competency framework is, that there's an expectation that one person has to do everything in the competency framework. It is kind of using the competency framework as a journey for someone to be able to progress through those various roles within the sector.
Right, and they can see exactly where they are on that pathway.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things with the competency framework as well is that it's been developed by the industry for the industry. So we have, for each of those roles, we have a review panel. And once we completed those 4 roles, we went out to the sector via our pipeline newsletter, which goes out to about 6,000 people, and asked the sector, what is the next priority role? What should we be focusing on? And there was a short survey that was completed, and the instrument technician was the next one that we are actually working on. So at the moment, we are now asking people that might be interested in wanting to join that review panel to get in touch.
Right. So obviously it's you can see why it's very necessary to have the competency framework, but where do people go to get the skills required? How does the sector ensure that this good quality training is happening out there? I guess that's a question for you, Ian.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's a fascinating discussion. Formal training, be it classroom-based or in the field or online, can provide the basic building blocks for learners. Now, there's various levels of detail available from those various forums, but the application of that knowledge is truly developed on the job. And that's where the personnel get experience. And experience is something that very few training providers or training programs can actually make available. As far as the quality is concerned, the quality is one of those things whereby it's best to try and meet a standard, and there is a formalized like NZQA or industry-based unit standards or levels of quality expected, and that has a tendency to lead to a consistent level of quality with regard to the big chunks of the aspects of the competency framework. When it comes to some of the smaller little bits and pieces, then we have an issue where some of the material that is available may vary in its consistency, mainly because of it depends on what you're training up to in that particular level.
So is this saying that the goal is, or have we got there yet, that wherever anyone is in the country, that they'll be measured consistently against other people in terms of where they've got to with their qualifications and skills?
I think that would actually be the aim, especially as the country at the moment is split up into multiple smaller authorities, and if the future is predicted as it seems to be for some 4 entities, there's still going to need to be a national standard, so you don't have regional standards if you wish. So you still need to have some sort of core document, be that the competency framework, and off that hopefully the industry-based standards levels. Now I mentioned NZQA only because it's like the I suppose, the consistent one that's been all the way through. However, that's not perfect either, because there are certain areas of the competency framework and certain areas of your day-to-day job, whatever that may be, that isn't covered in NZQA type of standard, if you like, or type of topic. And so that's when things get a little bit lost. And there are a few subjects that, as a trainer, if you are delivering this to a group of personnel, that if there is no unit standard written for it, it can actually slip through the cracks. I would like to think there are no gaps, but unfortunately there are gaps. There are some that are huge, that I can talk about later on. But on the other hand, as long as the industry is supported, or as long as there is a need, training programs can be developed, and they may well be just an hours with a trade supplier, as long as the trade supplier is delivering material to a standard, and that's possibly something that can be gleaned out of the competency framework, then it will be standard across the country. So that's where some coordination is required.
So, Nick, would you agree that we've got the gaps there that we need to be working towards?
I think Ian summed it up quite well. For example, the issue, I guess, with qualifications is that they're on cycles for updating and all of that, but some would suggest possibly that cycle isn't frequent enough. For example, when I did my national diploma, ultraviolet light wasn't a thing. So I never did that unit standard. Now, ultraviolet light out on the treatment plants now, especially the water ones, seems to be the acceptable technology. And the compliance rules, Te Maraerawai's rules, all reflect that. So, but I hold a national diploma, but I'm not competent in ultraviolet light, for example. So the gaps that are around, how do we fill emerging technology, the gaps around emerging technology and things like that. So, and industry best practice, I keep going back to the two gentlemen that were involved in the incident at Walkerton, where a number of people died in the big contamination. Both of those gentlemen were qualified, but none of them had done any ongoing training in 20 years. So they didn't know what E. coli was. They didn't know the impacts of chlorination and all the rest. So, and subsequently, the rest is history. So I think one of the key gaps is making sure that a competency framework reflects industry best practice. It reflects emerging technology, emerging pathogens and things like that. Whereas the qualifications, I think, gives you a grounding, but where the competency framework builds on that qualification.
Right. So no matter where you are in terms of your career, you can keep reflecting on the competency framework and say, this is my gap.
Yeah.
So,
yes, yeah, that's right. No, definitely. So if a water supplier buys a new widget, then there has to be an expectation then that operator becomes competent in using that widget. And that's where potentially, your competency framework is a bit more flexible and a bit more easier to implement at the coalface rather than quite a rigid qualification.
So Donna, how can the framework be incorporated at an organisational level? Could you tell us briefly, for instance, from the Downer perspective, how this has been done or how it could be done?
Sure. So we at Downer have put together a water training and competency framework procedure, which is going to go across all of our current processes, procedures, policies. And what that's going to do, it's going to ensure compliance across the Downer water business with the industry-related training and all of our competency requirements. It will provide a clear training career pathway which supports a skilled workforce so that we can deliver a safe and effective operation. It will involve, basically the Downer water training framework that we're putting into place will be put into the following categories, which is industry training requirements, which is Water New Zealand and also our friends at Connexus, industry competency requirements, which is the Water New Zealand, Downer training requirements, Downer competency requirements, and then we'll be going into task-specific training and competencies and plant and equipment training and competencies. And this is what we are currently incorporating across all of our standard operating procedures so that we can ensure that we meet the requirements and that our staff are fully trained and competent in the workforce.
So it's been a very, very important tool for you?
It has been a very important tool for us because it means that we can look at it across all of the different roles that we have versus the roles that Water New Zealand have put out. It's very good because it means that hopefully we haven't missed anything, and that we will be able to comply and make sure that we have those competent staff available to undertake the work.
And I think if I can just add in terms of the gaps, Debra, I think one of the opportunities within the competency framework, and in particular the at a glance that has been developed, is being able to identify the gaps in the training that's available. And the opportunity there is for training providers to be able to, either, put their hand up and say, we are actually currently developing this training, or we'll go away and develop this training. It's also an opportunity to create or make available micro-credentials where, for the example that Nick was using, that, you have your qualification, but technologies change, and having the availability of micro-credentials will allow someone to be able to get those additional training or courses that they would need to add to their toolkit.
What are you hoping from the sector in terms of, their response to the competency framework?
I think to not expect that if one person has to do everything in the competency framework, and that it is a journey. It is, to allow someone to be able to progress through the sector and have the opportunity of and working towards those various roles. And it provides people with an opportunity to know what they are working towards and where they could, for example, end up, for example, you're starting off as a junior operator, but that, should be encouragement for you that you could potentially then end up as a treatment plant operator. And I think, Nick, the other day, you and I had a conversation and you were talking about the, opportunities for people who, someone who started off as an operator and is now a tier 2 manager. And so there are various opportunities for people in the sector.
Right. Yes, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, ask you all, what would you say to, say, an 18-year-old who's thinking about getting a job at the Waikanai water treatment plant, for instance, and they're ambitious? How far could they go in their career? Could they become CEO of one of these new water entities? I mean, how much flexibility, how much support is there for a big career?
I think it lies with the individual themselves. Yes, you could go all the way through to becoming a CEO. There's no reason why not. My manager came into the water industry as an electrician, then was a water treatment plant operator and then's progressed through. Now he's a group manager at tier 2. So the world's your oyster. I think the key thing is identifying those opportunities and taking them. If a job comes up, back yourself, rate yourself and do it. Go for it. What do you think, Ian?
Well, I was actually going to bring you back down to the 18-year-old. How did you know there was a job at Waikanai? That's the point. The point I'm making is the fact that you're right about the visibility. You're right about the knowledge of the industry. For all the years I've been involved, I've always said that every town needs a water treatment plant. Every town needs a wastewater treatment plant. It's not exactly a job that's rare. Yet we very, very few of the operational staff that we have going through this place would have actually gone from school. I think it's probably less than 10 out of the maybe 2,000 or 3,000 I've taught that actually thought there was a training, thought there was a role in for them in that particular field. So that issue with regard to what visibility is there, do the schools get visited? Is there an opportunity for encouraging those personnel? And Nick's right. We've done surveys with the various personnel coming through here, and And they come from all sorts of backgrounds, absolutely. And as far as falling into the water treatment system is concerned, probably worse if you fall into the wastewater system. However, the point I'm making is the fact that a lot of our students have some sort of trade qualification already, or they could even be, a lot more of them now coming from sort of laboratory side of things. They've been a lab tech and a sampler, something like that, and they've got involved in the industry by, like, I suppose, a sideways rather than directly knocking on the front door, because they didn't even know there was a door to knock on.
Yeah, great points. Is there anything anybody else would like to add?
One other thing I was going to bring up was you were asking about support. I think training is supported by industry, and industry needs training, but there is a reality that kicks in there, and that reality is cost. Cost is training of the delivery itself for the assessment material, and also staff time. There's also the apparent effectiveness and the availability. Then they all impact on the exchange of knowledge in a formal way. Even stuff online, even stuff that's delivered face to face, even stuff that you go some sort of I suppose a free seminar has a cost, and it's when a manager looks at that cost and goes, as Nick sort of mentioned, do they see a benefit in that? Is there going to be another big outbreak of illness, and is it going to be their business, or are they having to meet a deadline with regard to costs? And I think we've got that sort of fight on our hands all the time.
Just to Ian's point as well is, the first thing, what I have found is that the first thing that gets cut out of a budget is always the training budget. And I guess if, we are working in a sector where we have to protect the health and well-being of individuals, it's, your staff need to be trained, and it's worth that investment, because you want to ensure that your staff are actually capable and skilled to effectively undertake a particular role. So I guess that's one of the things that I do struggle with, is that the training budgets are always the first to go. And I guess the key message would be for the decision makers is that to really think carefully about the training that staff are going to undertake, and not to look at that as a first or an easy way, I guess, to ensure that you meet those budget constraints.
Yeah, I agree, and I think at a basic level we should be treating our staff as though, they're assets. We, like a pump is an asset. We fund a maintenance for that pump. We make sure that the pump continues going, because at the end of the day, if that pump fails, there are consequences. And I think at a basic level, our operators are assets. They're assets that need to be maintained and need to be upgraded. And at the end of the day, if that asset fails, then there are consequences. So we pour money into physical assets such as pumps, pipes, and all the rest. But we're a bit lacking, I think, and short-sighted in terms of how we pour money into our most critical asset, which is our people.
And we're going to see that's going to have to change if we're going to find another 9,000 people in the next 30 years.
I was actually just going to add that we did some surveys of some recent courses, and we found that the majority of people in the room, and I think that blocks of 20, the majority of the people in the room had at least one vacancy at their place of work right now. And while you're looking for 6,000 to 9,000 people in the future, you're actually looking for people right now. And one of the issues that they need to have is knowledge, and knowledge is the asset. So not only, as Nick is right, not only do you need people there, you need people to help. You also need people to help who know what they're doing, and that elevates their value. And because there's such a shortage of operational staff at the moment, there are people being headhunted by others. And so right at the moment, there is some crazy salaries being offered to try and get people from moving from place to place. So not only is this a very valuable industry, right at the moment, operational staff and people with appropriate knowledge are incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and to take Mumtaz's point earlier on about the variety of roles within the organisation, we've come to, through periods of pain, we've come to realise that our customers, our people, our communities deserve to be heard. deserve to have a say through, their complaint and all the rest. That's the best form of giving us feedback in terms of how well we're performing. We're shortly recruiting, in fact, I think it goes out this weekend, for 5 customer service staff. So, we're starting to bring in, roles that we never really considered in the water sector previously.
So definitely this is a sector that offers plenty of opportunities. Clearly, we just need to get the word out. Thank you to all our panellists, Mumtaz, Nick, Donna and Ian. And thank you to everyone else for listening to this podcast. You can hear other episodes of Tāwara o Te Wai, Water Talk, by going to our website, waternz.org.nz, or on Spotify. Ngā mihi nui.